Have you ever caught yourself calling your dog your fur baby? Or, maybe you've seen a friend who calls themselves a dog mom or a pet parent. It's this huge cultural thing that's happening everywhere. And today, we're going to do a deep dive into the incredible psychology behind it. We're talking evolution, brain chemistry, and these massive global trends that explain exactly why our dogs have gone from the backyard to being, well, the center of our families.
So this is it. This is the big question for our whole explainer today. And, it seems pretty simple on the surface, but the answer is this fascinating mix of our most ancient instincts and some very, very modern pressures.
And here's our game plan. We're going to start way back in our evolutionary past. Then we'll literally look inside the human brain. After that, we'll zoom out to see what's happening in society, dig into our own individual psychology, and finally, we'll talk about the real-world consequences of this incredibly powerful bond.
All right, first up, to really understand why your golden retriever gets a full-on birthday party with a cake and guests, we have to rewind the clock way back, thousands of years. The reasons are literally written in our shared DNA.
It all starts with this idea called selective neoteny. Sounds complicated, but it's not. It just means that for thousands of years, without even realizing it, we humans have been choosing to breed dogs that look like puppies, even when they're fully grown. We've picked the ones with those baby-faced features, the bigger heads, the rounder faces, those huge eyes, because they push a button in our brains that screams, "Take care of me."
Now, this is where it gets really wild. If you compare them to their wolf ancestors, dogs have these rounder heads and much bigger eyes. But the absolute game changer is a brand new facial muscle they evolved, the levator anguli oculi medialis. This is the muscle that lets them pull off the legendary puppy dog eyes look. It's this incredibly powerful tool that mimics human sadness and just completely hijacks our nurturing response. A wolf simply can't do it. No way.
It wasn't just about how they looked. This leads us to the next piece of the puzzle, the canine cooperation hypothesis. The idea here is that we also picked dogs that were really, really good at paying attention to us. They became absolute experts at reading our body language, our gestures, our gaze, a lot like a human baby does. And that social genius is what allowed them to slot so perfectly into our families by tapping directly into our brain's parent-child bonding wiring.
Okay, so that's the history, but how does all that evolutionary stuff translate to our brains today? What is actually happening inside our heads when we're staring lovingly into our dog's eyes? Well, the science is just astounding.
It basically boils down to this incredible chemical dance, the oxytocin gaze-positive loop. When you and your dog lock eyes, both of your brains get a hit of oxytocin, the love hormone. That dose of oxytocin makes your dog want to stare at you even more, which then releases more oxytocin in you. And the loop just keeps going, getting stronger and stronger. And get this isn't just similar to the bond between a mother and a newborn baby, it is the exact same hormonal feedback system at work.
And brain scans prove this amazing overlap. When scientists had mothers look at pictures of their own child and then their own dog, the emotion centers of the brain, like the amygdala, lit up in almost the exact same way for both. But there are some key differences. The midbrain, which is super important for human-to-human pair bonding, was uniquely active only for the child. So what does that tell us? The bond is profoundly similar for sure, but it's not a perfect one-to-one replacement.
And it gets even deeper. Researchers using EEGs to monitor brainwaves found that when we interact with our dogs, petting them, talking to them, our brainwaves can actually start to sync up with theirs. It's called interbrain coupling, and it helps create that powerful, unspoken feeling of being completely in tune and understood by your animal companion. It's like you're literally on the same wavelength.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute. We've got the evolutionary backstory and the neurological wiring. But why is this pet-parent phenomenon exploding right now? The answer is all about these massive global shifts in how we live.
So, there's this theory from anthropologist Sarah Hardy that humans are cooperative breeders. That means we have this powerful, ancient instinct to care for the young in our community, not just our own kids. Well, in our modern world, in big cities, where people have smaller families and often have kids later in life, that powerful nurturing drive doesn't just vanish. It has to go somewhere. It looks for a new target. And dogs are just perfectly positioned to step right into that role.
And for a stunning real-world example, just look at this. In South Korea in 2023, for the first time in history, sales of pet strollers on a huge e-commerce site actually beat the sales of baby strollers. I mean, think about that. This isn't some tiny niche trend. It is a direct reflection of a gigantic societal shift. Fur babies are literally replacing human babies in the marketplace. And here is the number that puts that unbelievable statistic into context: 0.72. That was South Korea's total fertility rate in 2023, the lowest in the entire world. In societies where birth rates are falling fast, where more people live in cities, and where raising kids is super expensive, the psychological and the economic space for pet children just explodes.
So let's bring the focus back from the global down to the personal. How do our own unique personalities and our psychological needs, how do they shape just how intense this bond with our dogs becomes?
Well, psychologists have found something called the secure base effect in dogs. In experiments, a dog is way more confident and willing to explore a new, strange room when its owner is just sitting there. The owner acts like a safe harbor, a secure base that gives them the courage to check things out. This is a classic hallmark of the parent-child attachment bond we see in humans.
And here's where it gets really crucial. Our own personal attachment style totally affects this bond. People who have a more anxious attachment style often report poorer mental health, feeling this immense guilt whenever they have to leave their pet. But here's the paradox. People with an avoidant style, people who tend to struggle with human intimacy, they often report better mental health. For them, a pet provides this safe, non-judgmental relationship without all the messy complexities of human connection.
And all of this drives us to anthropomorphize. That's the fancy word for giving our dogs human thoughts and feelings. Psychology tells us there are three main reasons we do it. First, their baby-like faces just trigger us to think about them in human terms. Second, in a world that can be pretty lonely, they fill a deep need for social connection. And third, believing we know why our dog is acting out, well, it gives us a feeling of control in what can be a really unpredictable world.
Okay, so finally, let's explore the very real and sometimes very difficult consequences of these intensely deep bonds. When the relationship is so much like one with the child, it carries a profound emotional weight, both during their life and especially when we lose them.
Just take a look at this data on prolonged grief disorder. This is a clinical condition, a really debilitating kind of grief. The rate for people who have lost a pet is 7.5%. That is statistically identical to the rate for losing a close human friend. And it's not that far off from losing a partner. This isn't just about being sad, we're talking about a clinically significant psychological impact.
And yet that profound pain is often met with something called disenfranchised grief. It's a type of grief that society just doesn't fully approve of. People might hear things like, "Oh, it was just a dog," and they're expected to get over it quickly. And that can make the suffering and the isolation so much worse.
And we also have to think about the ethical side of this, the consequences for the dogs themselves. When we treat them exactly like little furry humans, we run the risk of ignoring their actual species-specific needs. This can lead to some serious problems, like severe separation anxiety, or really ineffective training because we're misinterpreting their dog behaviors as human ones. It can even cause them physical stress from being forced into situations like a crowded party that they just aren't built to handle.
And that really brings us to our final big question. There's no doubt the human-dog bond provides incredible comfort and structure and love for millions of people. But as we've seen, it's also deeply connected to loneliness, to shifting demographics, and our search for connection in a world that can feel really isolating. So we're left to wonder, is this intense pet parenting a healthy solution to our modern problems, or is it actually a symptom of them?